Good morning, Tim. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm going to be eating while we're talking, huh? So
That's okay.
I'll take me off the video so you won't see me.
So you're going to be discussing just various Haggadot on your Wednesday thing next week?
I have to check. You have to check with the rabbi and see, because I'm not sure if it's this week or next week. We started the 13 elements of faith from Maimonides last week.
Right.
And I'm not sure we got through all 13 principles. So I think he may want to continue that. I'm a little confused because he said we want to bring up Passover.
Right.
So whether we'll intercede, and Passover still has a week or two after that, right?
Right. It's not till the last Saturday of March.
Right. So this week he may continue with the other principles, right, and do a little bit more Maimonides, the prayer, yeah, for the people who don't know anything. What does, right, he call it? The perplexed, like we all are. And then and then I think we're going to be talking about it. And actually he responded to the email because I sent it out to our group,
Right.
And he said that apparently they're going to be using that. And he's going to put it online. I think they got permission to put it online.
Right. I talked to the CCAR this week because we needed to know what are they going, because we're going to be doing a Zoom Seder. Which one are they going to make available for rabbis to use? And since this is brand new, obviously they kind of want to, I guess, get it out there. And okay, so that's the one that they're going to make available for congregations, for Reformed congregations to use. So I'm
going to move off screen so you don't see me chewing.
Well, I don't want to see me chewing either.
Let me take our video off so you don't watch us.
Well, I can hear you.
Okay, I will just say that I bought it right away when it was published. They had a 30% off, which was a great deal too of the price. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to go through it completely thoroughly yet. But I like it. I like that it has a lot of alternate readings for each piece of the Seder using, different poetry. It has great explanations. We always have had non-Jews at our Seder, always. And so it has a lot of information that would be helpful if you do have non-Jewish people at your Seder that want some further explanation. I personally really, really like it. I'm going to be honest with you. In my I've probably looked at hundreds of Haggadot at different times, and I'm just going to go out there, and if I get in trouble for this, I don't care. I think 85% of them are stilted, dull, and boring.
Well, join in on our conversation.
Yeah.
Either check with the rabbi.
Yeah, I'll find out. We're going to do it.
Second class we have in front of us, it's poetry in response to art. I've got
I don't know who I'm hearing here. Somebody's video or audio is coming through.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Jeff. Hello, Jeff. Flo. Where's the wife?
You're frozen, but your picture is frozen. And it doesn't sound like you're hearing us or me.
Looks like he's making a bird call.
Now you're moving.
Well, what's happening is I'm on the telephone today, so I don't see. Okay, I have my picture here, but now I lost you guys.
Yeah, see, I've never done it via phone, so I have no way to direct you how to even. I know people do it, but I've never.
No, I see you now, Tim.
Okay.
No, Tim, I see you and I hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Do you? Oh, great. Okay, fine. So we're set. Floss is at an Ollie class today, so it's just myself.
Okay. Well, we were just talking about, Larry sent out the email about the Haggadah, the new Reform Haggadah, and I was just talking about how we have it. We bought it for ourselves for our own use at home, and I like it. I think it's really, really well done. I really do.
Okay, which Haggadah? I'm sorry, Tim. Which Haggadah is
the brand new one? The Reform Movement, the URJ with the CCAR just published a brand new Reform Haggadah called Mishkan HaSeder. That's what we're in now, Mishkan Tefillah, Mishkan
Right.
HaNefesh. So this is Mishkan HaSeder, brand new, just out. And I haven't looked at it completely thoroughly, but what I have looked at, I really like. I think it's a really, really good Haggadah.
Oh, very good. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll take a look at it.
It's they will be using it if you're gonna. I don't know if you're gonna plan to attend the Zoom Seder that the rabbi will be doing on the first night, but it's what the CCAR is making available to rabbis through a flip book that they can use online, you know, to do a congregational Seder virtually. So, but it's brand new, and obviously there's a lot of time and thought put into it. So
The congregational Seder is the first night?
yes, yes. They're only doing the one Saturday the 26th. And then I guess you can get some food from the synagogue for it. You pick it up Friday. They're going to have some Seder plate items available as well that you can get through the synagogue. I think the only things that will not be included, they will not have a shank bone on there. And I don't, obviously they're not going to give you salt water. You can do salt water, you know, yourself at home, but the rest of the ceremonial items that go on the Seder plate will be there. You can get that. You can get some matzo ball soup if you'd like that. And then I think it's a brisket. I think it's a brisket dinner, if I'm not mistaken.
Have they hired a new caterer yet? Have they decided on what they're doing?
I don't think so. I mean, Brian was staying through Passover to get us through, you know, Passover. And then I think shortly after Passover, he's finished. You know, when we go back to in-person services, which they're talking about, I mean, they are talking about it seriously, maybe mid-April, we'll start Friday nights first, and then maybe go to Saturday, and it may be like an every other week thing at first till they work the kinks out. But then who knows, you know, lunch is coming back. Who knows when that will happen either. If they
Right.
so.
Was he leaving? Do you know why he was leaving? Was it become uneconomical for him, or?
No, this is something he's always wanted to do. He has the ability to do it. He bought his, you know, RV. He loves to travel. He wants, his goal is to see all of the national parks in the US.
Oh, all right. So it's a vacation kind of time for him, not a new business venture.
No, he's basically just going to kind of live for a while, and, you know, good for him that he, at his age, as young as he is, that he can take the time and do this. And he has connections, I guess, in a lot of different places in his travels throughout the United States. He said, if I have to park someplace and take a gig to help somebody out and make a little money for, you know, a couple of weeks, I can do that, you know, so.
I wonder if he saw the Francis McDormand film.
I know. Well, I haven't said that to him, but I mean, we watched Nomadland a couple of weeks ago, and it made me think of him, but his vehicle is a lot classier, let me tell you, at least
really?
based on the pictures that I have seen of it. It's not going to be living, you know, off the land. He's got, you know, quite a nice setup from what I can see. So.
Is he married? Does he go alone, or is it the?
He's not married. This is taken off with him and I think his two cats. I think he's got two cats. So, you know what? Like I said, good for him. You know, when he told me about it, I said, well, you know, you're young enough to get out there and do it and enjoy it. So go do it. You know.
Yeah, that is great.
There's part of me that's kind of jealous, you know, thinking that we've got beautiful, beautiful parks in this country. You know, if you go out and spend some time visiting them, why not? You know,
the parks are magnificent. We've been to many of the national parks. We still have a few that we haven't gotten to. You know, well, if you count the national monuments, there's many, many more. You know, or national historic sites, or there's just so many. But national parks, there aren't too many. That is almost manageable. You know, that you can get to almost every one of them.
Well, and he takes great pictures. He says he has no background in photography, but I've seen the pictures that he's taken on some of his earlier travels to places, and their quality that you could make posters out of some of them. They're that beautiful. So, you know, like I said, good for him. You know, good for him. You know, go do it. All right, I guess we should get to the Torah portion. It's 1:06. We're just chatting here. Nothing wrong with that. That's okay. Anyway, so we are in the parsha that is called Kitisa this week. And this one has a great deal, this particular Torah portion has a lot to do with leadership. And that's kind of where my focus is on this when I was reading it. So leadership, as we all know, is important. We know that effective leadership can come from someone who understands the people that he or she is meant to lead. You have to have some understanding of them. When a leader is in tune with his or her people, then oftentimes things can run fairly smoothly. When a leader is not in tune, or even worse, when a trusted leader abandons the people that he or she is supposed to be leading, then oftentimes what results from that is some form of chaos. And we sort of see these ideals being played out in this week's Torah portion. As we know from past stories that we've dealt with in Exodus, we know that the Israelites have come to depend quite heavily upon Moses to be their leader and to guide them. To them, he is really God's emissary on earth. He informs the people what is expected of them.
What's up?
Them when they begin to fear or when they begin to lose hope. The Israelites sort of need Moses as their rock. And then all of a sudden he seems to disappear.
That's a civil war jack.
I'm going to mute. Oh, there we go. That's better. Okay. When Moses goes to the mountain, as he does, to commune with God, he doesn't return to the people in at least what they consider to be a timely fashion. Quite simply, they feel that he's gone for far too long, and they even begin to doubt that Moses is ever going to return. So they're feeling a bit rudderless, to use a ship metaphor. If you will, they feel the immediate need to find another way to remain in touch with God, because their emissary to God, Moses, has seemingly forsaken them. So they begin to gather gold and other precious metals, and they fashion, as Aaron looks on, seemingly unable or unwilling, however you want to interpret it, to stop them. And they fashion the golden calf. After all, this God that they are in covenant with and who Moses has been their emissary to has been invisible all along. None of them have seen God. So with Moses gone, the people sort of feel the need for something tangible, a tangible sign of God. Hence, they fashioned the golden calf, which historians believe was probably more similar in likeness to a bull than it was to a calf. In ancient theology, according to what Plaut tells us in our Torah commentary, bulls were considered to be pedestals of God. Not a God in and of themselves, but a pedestal of God. So the golden bull was meant to be a concrete link to God, a replacement for Moses, really more than a replacement for God. This is at least according to what Plaut tells us. So who among us, as just people today, who among us has not often wished for a tangible sign of something that we know is there, but it's sort of ethereal, something that isn't concrete? We want something tangible. And if we're to have faith in and belief in God, then it sort of is up to us to be able to hold on to that ethereal being, that concept that we call God. And we know that Judaism does not give to God anthropomorphic qualities. We do not represent God in human form, in bodily form. Our faith in a greater power is just that. It is a matter of faith. And for each of us, that greater power may exist in a somewhat different form. To the anxious Israelites wandering in the desert to, they don't even know where exactly, Moses was a leader, a person that they could go to and talk to discern important matters of faith. Now Moses is gone, and there was doubt that he would ever come back. The people are worried, they grow restless, and so they react in a very human way. They built something that they could see. They built something that they could touch. Was it really idolatry? Well, there are many Torah scholars that really will tell you it really was not idolatry as we often want to think of it, at least not in the strictest sense. Instead, it was a way to replace Moses with something real and something they could see standing before them. Well, this is not in any way an excuse for their actions. It does sort of lessen the severity of their, quote, sin to some extent. When Moses sees what they have done, of course, he reacts in great anger. He throws down and he smashes the tablets of the law. And we have to wonder, is he more angry at the notion of the idolatry or more angry at the lack of faith and trust that the people have shown in him? And we will never know that. That's a question we just can't answer, but it's certainly a question sort of worth consideration. You know, nobody likes to feel abandoned by the people that they trust, by those that they are meant to guide. We can likely all think of times in our lives when we felt let down or we felt forsaken by someone who was supposed to be there for us, regardless of the situation. So if remembering those times in our own lives makes us more sympathetic to our ancient ancestors, then perhaps we won't judge them quite as harshly. It then falls upon Moses to repair the damage that's been done. Moses will return to God and he will plead with God not to abandon his covenant people. Moses will make a case for the Israelites, and in the end, God will relent in his anger. This is something we see repeated more than once in our Torah. And though Moses asks to see more of God, so Moses pushes the boundary a little bit here in this Torah portion, God does not acquiesce to Moses's request. However, he does permit Moses to gain further insight into the nature of God. And it's actually, interestingly enough, in this Torah portion that the attributes of God are revealed to Moses. This is where Moses learns that God is compassionate, God is gracious, God is slow to anger, God is abounding in kindness, God is abounding in faithfulness, forgiving of iniquity, and forgiving of sin. We also learn, however, that despite God's merciful nature, he will resort to punishment when the limits of God's mercy have been pushed just too far. When Moses returns from the mountain to the people, in this case, he emits this sort of radiant glow, we are told in the Torah, a radiant glow that is so brilliant that he needs a veil to cover his visage. God does not abandon the people, so instead, he lets Moses know more of who he is so that Moses can communicate these qualities to the people. These are the very same attributes that are still invoked today by Jews through prayers in our liturgy and in the words of hymns such as Adon Olam and Yigdal. Now, while the tale of the golden calf does change the course of the Israelites' history, it is necessary for us to learn from it something about the nature of leadership and something about the nature of faith. In Judaism, we are expected to keep our faith in a God who is not visible, who is not tangible, who cannot be represented in any artistic form. And while there may be times of doubt, we cannot turn to a substitute for the positive attributes that God is supposed to represent to us. So even in times of fear, and perhaps even more so in times of fear, we must hold on to the ephemeral belief in that higher power or that higher force that we happen to call God. So there we are. I'll open it up to anybody's ideas or comments here. I just found it fascinating that many Torah scholars don't call this idolatry in the strictest sense of idolatry. More that the people needed something to look at, that Moses wasn't there, and it became the tangible something that represented something that Moses had represented. So I just kind of found that I had never seen that before.
Tim,
Yep.
that's also the first time I've seen, the concept that it wasn't a calf. The first time I've ever heard it mentioned as more like a bowl.
I found that also interesting, but there were several points, and I actually have seen in some people who try to put this particular Torah story to art, generally not probably Jewish artists, but art nonetheless, where it does have more the look of a bowl. It's sort of, I saw one rendering of it where it looks sort of like the bowl that's in front of Wall Street in New York, this sort of raging, angry sort of thing ready to attack. But there is the idea of a bowl representing the symbolic pedestal of God. So if this was known to the people, that they understood this representation of the bowl or the symbolism of the bowl, that would be what they might fashion, rather than, we think of a calf, which is like a baby cow,
Right. Was the bowl used in any other contemporary religions at that time.
Well, accordingly, from
The
what I
bull
could gather,
necessarily.
right, from what I could gather, yes, this was a symbol that was used in other tribal people, other people of the time, also as having some connection to a higher deity.
I'm about to reveal a secret
Okay.
that
Uh-oh, a secret.
a secret that I'm only going to share with you guys, and I haven't told anybody.
Yes.
And that is that this was my bar mitzvah portion.
Oh, there you go.
Though I had no idea at the time
Oh,
what it meant. You know, the total responsibility I heard had as bar mitzvah was the Haftorah. It
Right.
wasn't really the Torah. I mean, you were called up maybe for the last, Aliyah, and then you went into the Haftorah portion.
Right.
But at any rate, tomorrow is the 70th anniversary of my bar mitzvah. So I'm 83.
Oh, mazel tov on that.
oh, wow.
So we're having a little just family service. I'm not inviting anybody to it, but it's a family service after Rabbi Haas is going to be doing a little bit for us. And hopefully later in the fall, I'll do a little bit of, we'll have a luncheon or something when Mikveh Israel, really reopens.
Well, we can get back to where we can gather again.
Normal, yeah. So just as a point.
So you're going to actually chant your Haftarah again?
I'm not chanting the Haftorah. What I'm going to do is talk about it.
Okay.
And I think it's funny because there are two Haftorah portions according to that you could possibly read, depending on the proximity of the date on which this falls to Passover.
Right.
So apparently the one that the rabbi is going to be doing tomorrow is on Ezekiel. And the one which is more of the Sephardic version, the one I'm going to be doing is the one more on Elijah and Ahab, the story of the contest in Mount Carmel.
Right.
So at any rate, that's the story. But so I won't chant it, but I'll be talking a little bit about it. And,
right.
Because Elijah is a better prophet to me than Ezekiel. I like that. And he's closer to Passover. He's more relatable to Passover and to many other things.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
So that's just between us. And hopefully
70 years ago, you were standing in the synagogue, just getting ready to chant your heart out.
Exactly, in Brooklyn, New York. But getting back to the Torah portion, I read Ki Tisar again. Not that I'm going to do anything with it, but I'm going to, at least I wanted to be more familiar with it. And there are a couple of things that are pretty troubling about it.
Mm-hmm.
One is, I think there's, prior to Moses coming down the first time with the tablets, the original tablets, I think God already has seen that the Israelites were revolting.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically talks to Moses, and Moses reminds him and he wants to destroy the Israelites at that time, and that Moses basically prevails on him not to.
Right.
Before this, and reminds him of the covenant. But then when Moses goes down there, Moses has apparently a change of mind.
Well, I know. Right. I mean, he pleads a case for the people, which Moses does more than once in the Torah. And because God is angry and God wants to, just like, that's it, I'm done, I'm over, I'm finished. But you're right. Then he comes down and then he's got this intense amount of anger. So I don't know what changed in his attitude, or maybe he felt, okay, I can make this deal with God, don't destroy them, but I have to show the people my extreme displeasure with how they have reacted or how they behaved. So, because I thought, well, maybe that's it. I've already talked to God and we've already kind of figured this out, but I need to let the people know and see just how utterly upset I am with how they're behaving.
But the worst thing is that not only does he destroy the commandments, but he has many of the Israelites slaughtered.
Yes.
I mean, that, as a punishment. So he goes so far beyond what the covenant had agreed to that he, the story just kind of, to me, and I know Moses is kind of a hero, but it turns out to me that, and I know it just bothered me, that part of the story, which is most often untold.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, as we know, we have a lot of pieces of the Torah that we often want to gloss over because they're not pretty. They're not, something that we really want to highlight. But then interestingly enough, too, then it's later on in the Torah portion where we're getting all these, attributes of God, such as mercy and compassion and all of these things. And then you want to back up a little bit and say, well, okay, where was Moses showing some amount of mercy and some amount of compassion? So we're getting it as attributes of God. But if those are attributes of God, I always think then those are things we should try to model in our own lives as well. And it doesn't seem that Moses is particularly good at that.
Yeah, and that's where Aaron kind of comes in as kind of the mediator. And as you say, whether Aaron, is complicit, or whether Aaron has no control, or whether Aaron sees it as a forestalling tactic until Moses comes down to quiet the people, and he's looked more as the peacemaker. So in a lot of more modern interpretations, he becomes, I guess, more of, the good guy in the piece. And, he's not the impetuous guy.
Right.
He's the one that is trying to keep things calm. I think he recognizes that it's really Moses that the people miss. It's not that they're abandoning God, but they want something, as you say, tangible,
right,
in order to look upon and to pray to. And this actually came up in the 13 Principles of Maimonides, where I think one of the principles talks about, you're not supposed to pray to any intermediaries.
Right.
And, Moses was thought to be here almost like an intermediary. And he's really tries to take himself, or Aaron is saying, we want to take him out of that role. You can still pray to God. You don't need Moses, but he doesn't, he fashions the calf. And the other thing is, Aaron is apparently the one who asks for the gold. Now, a lot of historians say, well, he asked for the gold thinking they're not going to give that up.
Right.
Almost like a ploy, like I'm going to ask for something that I know is not going to happen. And then he says, well, see, you're not willing to give that up. So we got to return to, to our good ways and stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a lot to bite on. And,
right. And apparently, depending on whose interpretation you look at, because there are a lot of, the interpretations that want to make Aaron completely the fall guy for not stopping it, that he should have stopped the people. He should not have permitted it to happen, but he sort of stood back, let it happen. And so they want to make him the bad guy. But it seems like the more modern commentaries are saying, no, you really cannot just point the finger at Aaron. It's not really his fault that this happened. So it's interesting that it's kind of like the stance on where Aaron falls in all of this has changed over the years. And we don't really want to see him as the fall guy anymore here. I mean, I don't think it's his fault. He's facing fearful, angry, upset, worried people who feel like they need to do something, whatever. Yeah. And the something they choose to do is not obviously the wisest thing to do, but they feel the need to do it because they're feeling lost. And so they do it. And had he really stepped in, could he have stopped them, or would they have then turned on him? I don't know. Hard to know.
Yeah. Think January 6th at the riots in the Capitol. The poor policemen had to go through, maybe some of them went a little too far of being obligatory toward the crowd, but the vast majority of them, tried, and then they kind of said, okay, let's step aside, and hopefully we'll get more reinforcements, maybe Moses will come, and help us out here.
Right. Well, when you're outnumbered, you're outnumbered. I mean, there's no question about it, and if Aaron maybe might have had some amount of backup, but I mean, he's got an angry mob of people and he can only do what he can do. And at some point he just does have to kind of raise his hands and say, okay, they're going to do it. So, I guess I just kind of step back or step away and let it happen, and that's what he does.
So once again, you guys are sworn to secrecy now, as far as, not saying anything, okay?
My lips are sealed.
I didn't hear it, right? Okay, good.
Don't know it. Dark.
We'll wait till the fall to see what happens, okay?
Right. So, yeah, I don't know. This is just, I just thought this was an interesting Torah portion, just on the whole notion of, how people react when they feel their leader is gone or has turned on them or abandoned them or whatever, that they just get, and they still, you have to also say, they don't even know where they're going. They're wandering and they have really no concept of where they're going to end up at this point. So, I mean, you can understand from the people's point of view why they would be as worried and upset as they are. You brought us out here and now you're going to leave us. Now what do we do?
One commentator I read described Exodus as pretty much a book of hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait, hurry, get out and then wait, get out, then wait, wait for Moses to come down, wait for hurry up and get out of Egypt and then wait 40 years in the desert and stuff like that. So it's
yeah, it's a long term.
Well,
and the countryside wasn't very
yeah, it wasn't like they were on the beach, just
right.
having
The
a good
countryside
time,
wasn't very welcoming, right? And
it's not like they're sipping Mai Tai, so but they, I mean, when you really think about the whole thing, it's a pretty remarkable, again, we don't know how much is fact and how much is not, but it's still a pretty remarkable saga. When you think about these people just took this leap of faith and off they went, not having a great deal of knowledge about what's going to happen to them, how long and where and all of that, but they did it,
Yeah.
If somebody came to me with a proposal like that today, I'd be thinking, I don't know about this. I'm not so sure about it.
I think I had mentioned that we had heard a professor of Judaism and history from Rutgers University, and he gave a talk in a temple in New Jersey a couple of years ago, and he had archaeological kind of evidence of settlements that were along the way. And it spanned over 100 years. So it wasn't like, boom, instantaneously, the light goes on and it lets everybody leave at midnight. It took place over a long, long period of time, and settlements were established along the way. So maybe some people did settle, and they had to settle toward the middle of the country because they couldn't settle at the Jordan River Valley because that was pretty much occupied. They couldn't settle on the coast because that was pretty much occupied by the Canaanites, who were stronger than they were. So they had to settle along the way there. And they see this evidence, archaeological evidence, pretty much in the middle of Israel there, of these settlements, and they're able to date them based on, remains, carbon dating, that they took place over quite a long period of time. So that, people did settle along the way and try to establish little villages, and maybe they thought that was it. We're going to stop, we're going to settle. This is the end of the journey.
Right. Well, and if they've made a life, I guess, that what they felt was comfortable for them at that point. It's like, you guys can keep going. We're okay here. So we'll just stick around here. Maybe we'll catch up with you later. Maybe we won't. Maybe this is just where it's going to be for us. I mean, it's understandable. I mean, why not? If you're feeling okay with the way you're living, we'll just stick it out right here.
And actually, prior to the War for Independence, I think in Egypt, this was in the 40s or even earlier than that, I think there were as many as 3 million Jews had been in Egypt at that particular time.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and some of the synagogue, we were in one of the synagogues in Cairo, and they, use it now as a memorial. There are no Jews, practically no Jews there, except ones that, I don't even know if there are any, but they take you into the synagogue, and, it's kind of like a shrine to the history, showing that they preserved this monument in Egypt of what Judaism was. But there was a lot of Jews living in Egypt that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a thriving Jewish community at one point. The last I saw, and I don't know how they know this or how they even figured this out. The last thing I saw, that there were 5 Jews in Egypt right now.
Okay. I saw another thing where they're all gone now, but if you have 5, what I had read, they were down to 2 and then there were none. But let's hope a few have hung on.
I don't know, or I don't.
Be a pretty life.
I wouldn't plan on there being a very large revival of Judaism in Egypt anytime soon. I don't think it's going to happen. But I mean, it is interesting that in these countries, that are seemingly very hostile to Israel, there are these small pockets of Jews who never left for whatever reason. Because there was an interesting story in the foreword, I want to say maybe close to a year ago, about the Jews who still are living in Iran.
Right, right. Yes, that I've heard, that there's some have still remain there. Yes.
Right. And they are allowed, they do have their holidays and they do what they can do. And they're kind of pretty much left alone. They aren't bothered. They don't feel, a sense of persecution. Now, they're not, obviously out, celebrating in public, but they, from what I can remember, they felt fairly secure to continue their practices of Shabbat and the holidays and things like that. But it's just this small remaining community that never left, that never got out, So, what do you do?
Yeah, that surprises me. I would not have thought Iran to have had any Jews at all. They are so vehemently against Judaism in Israel. Not that any of the Arab countries would endorse Israel, wholeheartedly, even though they have peace treaties. Iran, I would put at the top of the list as far as those that would not.
Yeah,
Right.
Well, when I read the article, I remember, first of all, when I saw the headline, I was a little shocked just to think that, there's even any community left at all. And then when I read the article, it was interesting that they don't live their lives cowering in fear, 24 hours a day, every day of the week. So, I don't know how they've managed to kind of make that peace as whatever, or maybe, it's just in the little local area where they are, people just sort of, leave them alone, don't bother them. And as long as they don't make any kind of trouble or waves, I guess they can continue to do what they do,
Yeah.
Well, they've had problems, the communities obviously had problems before. I remember the head of the Jewish community in Iran was put up on a trial and then hung for being a Zionist spy. So they've, the community lives under this umbrella of danger.
Oh yeah, I certainly don't think it, like I said, they're not out in the streets proclaiming, visibly, openly of their Jewish heritage, but I guess at least in the comfort of their own homes and whatever, they can kind of keep the traditions that they do, But I don't think there'll be any grand revival of Judaism in Iran anytime soon either.
No.
In some countries, where Jewish communities were falling away, but then there's a new book coming out. This is getting a little off topic, but I was just reading this morning. There's a new book coming out by a Polish Holocaust historian, and he reveals evidence that the destruction of Jewish cemeteries in Poland was primarily at the behest of the Poles and not the Nazis. That the majority of toppled gravestones, plowed over, desecration of over hundreds of Jewish cemeteries was not really the Nazis' handiwork, it was actually the work of the local population.
Would you come help me?
So anyway, I don't know. Right now, relationships between Jews and Poles are pretty tenuous. The new government in Poland is quite nationalistic, and it's always been sort of the treading a fine line. So I don't know when this is published. I'm sure it's not going to go over well. I don't think it's out in Poland yet. I'm not even sure the book is completely published yet. It's getting ready to be published. It was an interview with the author, but it's not going to do much, I don't think, to cement good relationships in Poland between Poles and Jews. I'm just saying.
Well, Poland, of course, was at the time, maybe it isn't now, the most Catholic country in the world.
Right.
And, they basically, there's so many stories of how complicit they were with the Nazis, and also, I don't know about the numbers, but I would certainly not doubt that they had certain hand in it. Have you seen the film 1945?
No, I have not.
1945 is a very interesting movie about two, basically they look like black hats coming back right after the war to Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
They had been apparently living in this community, and they wanted to bring back a person who had died back to this small community in Hungary, someplace, to be buried, and they want to take them to a cemetery. And the people there get very, very nervous. Like, why are these Jews now coming back home, thinking that they want to regain their property rights or whatever it was, their wealth and things like this.
Right.
And it reveals at a time when there's a wedding taking place in this town in Hungary, of another couple there, and I guess the conscience starts to set in on people, and the fact that these Jews have now come back into the neighborhood. They really are not sure of the motives of, why the two guys had come back, whether it's to bury him or whether, someone who had died, or whether it's to, try and regain property rights. And the conflict starts with the ex-mayor who was there, who apparently had been complicit with the Nazis at the time, and stuff like that. So it's a Holocaust style film, but it's post-Holocaust. And it takes place on, during these kind of returns. And I'm sure the same thing happened, throughout Europe. And Poland is, I'm sure, no exception.
Well, we know, because we know history has shown us that after, everything was over, in 45 and 46, there were pogroms in Poland that were carried out against returning Jews who were trying to come back to the towns, the cities that they lived in, and for the very same reason. Oh, you're coming back. Well, we've taken your house, we've taken your land, we've taken everything. Well, who do you think you are coming back and asking to, get your house back or whatever? And so they rose up and murdered them.
Yeah. Well, the same thing has happened even with, not murder, but with the assets. And for example, in Berlin, in places where they had artwork that was done, how do you prove that that was your piece of artwork that is now, in the hands of another German family, that it, or a German museum someplace or something like that? I don't know if you had a chance yesterday. They had an interesting from the JEA here in Savannah, which was part of the Jewish Film Festival, and they had a scribe on who was part of the film, and he basically was talking about some of the changes that were when you're not altering, but when you're what was it called? Not rewriting, but the Torahs, when you have to make alterations in it because the Torahs, are somehow not kosher any longer. And there a couple of people from Mikveh Israel were on, and they talked about the Torah that they had received, as well as one from AA. And it got into that kind of a conversation as far as, some of these Torahs that were now, worldwide distributed, many in the United States. I forgot my point, but it was related to that kind of, it was related to that.
I mean, because we're supposedly at Mikveh Israel, we are holding this Torah until such time, if there is ever another Jewish community that begins to, organize itself in, what's the name of the town? Slaney, I believe.
That's where it was from, right? Slaney was our Torah from Mikveh Israel. Slaney.
Right. No, but the idea is that we're only holding it for safekeeping if and when there's a Jewish community there again, God willing, then we would return the Torah to them when they have a place to put it, but right now there is no Jewish community in that particular community right now. So, I think that's the idea. But like you said, with artwork, how do you prove that, this was hanging in our family home for however many years until the Nazis confiscated it,
Yeah.
And didn't they do that movie a few years ago about the lady in gold or something?
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was a good movie, but I can't remember who was in it. I remember liking the movie very much.
Yeah, Jane just said it. Klimt is the artist.
Yes, Klimt. Yes.
Klimt
Yes.
painting. Yeah.
I'm trying to think who the lead.
Vienna, actually, but it was very similar. Vienna is same, pretty much.
Well, yeah. I mean, after the Anschluss, it was considered part of Germany anyway. So.
Yeah, well, trying to prove approbation in a painting. So different anyway.
I just missed whatever you said.
trying to prove approbation, in a painting, who owned it, in a particular period in time, because there's so many fakes and forgeries, and who knows, what came out at what time, and it's very difficult anyway.
Speaking of fakes and forgeries, apparently there's a new movie on Netflix about the whole fake art community. I don't know remember what it's called. It's just coming out. I think it's just coming on to Netflix now in March, but it has to do with this whole notion of this fake art community with forgeries and fakes and whatever.
I think we saw it. It's almost it's a really, really unusual movie, and it's about many of the modern artists who I think are pretty easily faked. The Mark Rothko, those kind of guys. I mean,
Right.
And there's about this woman in she owned an art gallery, and she became friends with someone in Long Island, and a couple of people in Long Island became kind of like the distributors for this kind of art, and all of a sudden, a massive number of new paintings were found that were, attributed to Kandinsky and some of the, people that you could probably draw anything and say, yeah, well, some scribbles and online.
Yeah, a lot of paintings have been decertified in museums because of that. As the technique gets better for detection using X-rays and sonars and all sorts of devices, some paintings have been decertified. Did you get a chance to see the Klimt painting of the Lady in Gold? That was at the Austrian embassy, well, not the embassy, but the museum in New York City. It was on display there for quite a while.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if this is the one, but there were so many of them that he painted that were like this. But yeah, the Neues Gallery in New York, right opposite.
That looks very similar to what I remember from the film.
They're all very, very similar in that kind of design, and what's different about them obviously are the different women, but also the way he blends the pictures into the gowns and things like that, the coloring and things.
Sure.
I'm trying to find the one with the woman in gold.
Yeah, Austria considered that their national portrait, their most important.
Like these kind of things,
right?
The town and the woman, they're almost Egyptian in a sense,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he definitely had a style that was,
very unique. Well, it was Art Deco-ish.
Pretty recognizable, anyway.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe Moses was a painter. Who knows?
But apparently, the other thing that the fellow mentioned yesterday is that there's quite a not a market. I would hate to say a large market, but for fake Torahs that are coming out. Yeah, that apparently have not been totally kosherized. That also there's an approbation associated, because each one of the Torahs, I think there's like 1,500 or something like that, that were the so-called Czech Torahs that were put into this storage facility, whether or not it was supposed to be a museum that the Nazis were going to set up to, to preserve not preserve, but to show off the Jewish culture as a culture that had gone away. And the woman kind of said that's more of a myth, she thought, than a reality, that a lot of the Jewish people actually put the Torahs there, with the permission of the Nazis for safekeeping, which I can't understand, why they would have brought the Torahs there. But so she says there are, the story is a little unanswered.
Yeah.
But, he brought up the fact that there are on the market now, what he calls, I'm sure they were unkosher Torahs, because he talked about, the whole process of koshering a Torah, how qualified the scribe has to be, not only in the artistic part, but the scribe almost has to be a rabbinic scholar.
Sure.
He has to have the knowledge of what went into it. So it's not just a question of, copying it, and but it's the fact that he has to understand, the intimate details of what's in the words.
Well, interesting enough, because I remember about 30 years ago, so I'm going back a ways, but it just struck me. There was an exhibit that was in the United States. I don't know when it started, but it was called Precious Legacy. And it was an art exhibit that was quite extensive. And it was going to be, what they found were these Jewish pieces of art, but they were menorahs, there were Seder plates, there were, Kiddush cups, Havdalah sets, all kinds of things that had been confiscated from various Jewish homes by the Nazis. And, they didn't know how to get them back.
Jeff, can you mute yourself, Jeff? I'm hearing a lot of background noise. I'm sorry. Jeff, could you, thank
There
you.
we go. There we go. So they had all these, and they're beautiful, and it was called Precious Legacy, and it was going to be, the Nazis were planning, according to the art exhibit, to have a museum to the lost culture. And they would have put all of these pieces of Judaica into a museum, you know, and which I always found kind of interesting. So here your goal was to completely annihilate these people from the face of the earth, but now you're going to build this museum to a lost culture. So you're sort of going to memorialize them in a way, but yet you thought them vermin, you know, when they were on earth. I just couldn't quite wrap my head around it, although it was a very fascinating exhibit and there were beautiful, beautiful pieces in it. But I remember going up to Detroit, because I mean, I was living in Ohio at the time, and it was showing at the Detroit, whatever, the Detroit Museum of Art, whatever their big Detroit, I don't know what they call it. But anyway, it was an amazing, amazing exhibit.
Yeah. But I'm not above the Nazis to have done that, because they did something also with what they called exhibits of degenerate art, where they had these large exhibits of, you know, paintings that they considered to be, you know, not in the Nazi spirit, not in the spirit of Germany, where they would, you know, either modern artists or artists who painted subject matter that they didn't approve of. So, you know, they used to exhibit that as well as an exhibit of what not to do. And, you know, and as a conquered civilization, it's almost like, you know, what is that in Rome, where they have the arches and the, you know, where they show walk around, you know, sculpture around the arches, where they're carrying the menorah out of the temple, the Romans, you know, and the victorious are carrying, you know, so it's kind of a symbol of the Nazi glory that they're able to, you know, like who's capturing the lost ark, you know.
I guess, yeah,
ark.
it is, because but there's this sort of disconnect. But, you know, I guess if you think the way they think, you know, who knows? But I remember, you know, it was just, you know, all of these various things that they have confiscated from synagogues and homes and things of that sort that they were planning to put on display. Clearly it didn't happen, but, you know, this exhibit traveled anyway, and it was pretty interesting. So anyway, anybody have final thoughts? Our goal this weekend is to watch the Billie Holiday movie.
Oh, yeah. Jeff just said he saw that one overnight. He said it was really, really good. He saw that last night.
Well, we're only halfway finished with it. So, but it is quite an interesting movie. And, oh, I know what it was. Yeah, it brings out the fact that she sung a very important song to the Black community to let them know about the hangings, called Strange Fruit.
Yeah, it's a chilling song.
Right. And if you've seen the words of it, it's, you know, quite interesting. And Hoover took a personal dislike to it because he felt it was leading to instability in the country. So once again, you blame the victim, not the perpetrator.
Right. No, I used to use the song actually when I was teaching high school, and we were reading To Kill a Mockingbird and talking about racism and things of that sort. I would play the song for the kids, give them a copy of the lyrics, and oftentimes have them, you know, write a response to it, because it is a very, very powerful, very chilling song.
You know, strangely enough, she just won the Golden Globe for the Best Actress. She beat out quite a good competition in that. But the movie itself apparently didn't even get that much great recognition. So it was just her single role in that, the Billie Holiday versus the USA, I guess.
I need you again.
I've always liked Billie Holiday's music, and Caleb and I both do. So we're just fascinated to see how this is going to, you know, how the movie is going to go. And since she did with the Golden Globe, I'm kind of anxious to see her particular portrayal as well. So
yeah, there was a good show a couple of years ago on Broadway with Audra McDonald, and she did Lady Day at the
what was that? It's some
Billy
lounge club, something
like that, and you know, based on that. But I don't think they went into the trial as much. The other film that's out that also he received the Academy Award for the Best Supporting Actor is the Judah and the Black Panther movie, you know, which kind of is tied into you know, the Chicago 7 trial, you know, with the assassination of, I forget the guy's name already. That was, I think he was the one that was bound and gagged during the Chicago 7 trial. And then the police came in and they basically murdered him, you know, and the findings showed that only one shot was fired by one of the Black Panthers, and that was sort of a reaction shot.
Right. Yeah. So there's always good stuff to watch.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Now, mum's the word, guys.
Oh, I haven't heard a word. I don't know anything.
Absolutely. Thank you. Until
They can't use, you know.
Hey, Larry, can that be passed on to Flossie, or does she already know?
No, she doesn't know because he made me swear not to.
Well, I didn't want to tell anybody, but it kind of blurted out. I thought it was up. So I'm sorry. But,
Okay, so I won't tell Flossie about it at all. So
very good. Okay, very
okay.
good. All right.
Tell her.
All right, everybody.
You can tell her, Jeff.
Okay.
All right,
Take
bye-bye.
care, guys.